When people ask me about my childhood, I usually change the subject. It's not that it was terrible, I had food on the table and a roof over my head, but let's just say it wasn't exactly the Brady Bunch. My name's Ruby, and at 32, I'm finally ready to tell my story. Not because I want sympathy, but because maybe someone out there needs to hear it. I was 8 when my life changed completely. That's when my sister Sarah was born, 2 months premature. I still remember my dad rushing to the hospital in the middle of the night, and my Aunt Jessica coming to watch me. Everyone was so worried about the baby, and honestly, so was I. I didn't know much about premature babies then, but I could tell from the adults' faces that something was wrong. Sarah survived, but she was incredibly fragile. Our house turned into something between a hospital and a fortress against germs. Mom was constantly cleaning, and the smell of disinfectant became as familiar as the scent of dinner cooking. Every surface gleamed, and God forbid if I so much as sniffled. "Ruby, was that a cough?" Mom would ask, her eyes narrowing with concern, not for me, but for Sarah. "We can't take any chances. Pack your bag, you're going to Grandma's for a few days." And off I'd go, either to Grandma's house or Aunt Jessica's, like I was being quarantined. It happened so often that I kept a pre-packed bag in my closet. At first, I tried to see these visits as mini vacations, but after a while, it just felt like exile. I threw myself into school, determined to at least make them proud that way. I got straight A's, joined the debate team, even won a regional science fair. But every achievement was overshadowed by Sarah's latest doctor's appointment or minor improvement. "Look, Mom, I got first place in the science fair," I'd say, holding up my trophy. "That's nice, honey. Did you wash your hands?" Sarah's been a bit sniffly today. The worst part? When Sarah turned 7, she suddenly stopped getting sick. It was like a switch flipped, and she became this perfectly healthy kid. But nothing changed with Mom and Dad. They'd spent so long protecting her that they didn't know how to stop. And Sarah? She learned pretty quick that she could get anything she wanted by playing the fragile card. High school should have been my time to shine. I was doing everything right, honor roll, extracurriculars, the works. But in our house, Sarah's drama always took center stage. I remember one parents' night particularly well. My chemistry teacher had just finished telling Mom and Dad about my potential for a science scholarship. "Ruby's one of our brightest students," Mr. Peterson said, beaming. "She has a real future in." Before he could finish, Mom's phone rang. Sarah was having a crisis at home with the babysitter. "What's wrong, sweetie?" Mom asked into the phone, already gathering her things. I could hear Sarah's theatrical sobs through the speaker. "I can't find my favorite pen for homework. The one Ruby gave me is stupid." Just like that, parents' night was over. They rushed home to console Sarah over a pen. A pen. I stood there watching them hurry away, Mr. Peterson awkwardly patting my shoulder. After that, I noticed they stopped coming to my events altogether. It was easier that way, they said. No risk of Sarah's tantrums interrupting things. When I won the state debate championship, they didn't even put the trophy on the mantle. "Sarah gets anxious when she sees other people's achievements," Mom explained, tucking my trophy into a drawer. College acceptance day should have been huge. I got a full ride to state, academic scholarship, merit grants, the whole package. I was over the moon until I got home. "Whatever," Sarah rolled her eyes at dinner. "Now you can finally move out and I can turn your room into my gaming paradise." I'm thinking 3 monitors, maybe a streaming setup. I started counting down the days until freshman orientation. 4 years of college flew by, with me spending every possible moment in the dorms or library. Home became a place I visited occasionally, usually for mandatory family dinners where Sarah held court with tales of her latest middle school drama. At 23, armed with my degree, I landed a job as a manager at Thompson & Company. The salary wasn't great, enough to rent a tiny apartment and buy grocery store sushi, but not much else. I should have been discouraged, but honestly, just having my own space felt like winning the lottery. Then one day, scrolling through social media on my lunch break, I saw an ad for an investment course. Learn to make your money work for you. Usually, I'd scroll past that kind of thing, but something made me stop. The course wasn't cheap, but it was within reach if I ate ramen for a month. That course changed everything. The instructor, Dave, had this way of making complex investment strategies seem obvious. I started small, putting a few $100s into promising tech stocks. Then a few hundred more. I studied market trends like my life depended on it, took advanced courses from top investors, learned about risk management and portfolio diversification. My first big win came from a small AI company nobody was watching. My $500 investment turned into $5,000 in 3 months. Then came the biotech startup that tripled my money. Before I knew it, my side hustle was making more than my day job. I'll never forget the morning I realized I could quit. I was sitting at my desk, pretending to care about quarterly reports, when my investment app pinged. Another stock had hit my target price. I did the math, my investment income was now triple my salary. I typed up my resignation letter right there. I kept going to those Saturday family dinners. Don't ask me why, maybe habit, maybe some lingering hope that things would change. I'd sit there, picking at Mom's overcooked chicken, listening to them go on and on about Sarah's life, while my investment portfolio pinged away in my pocket. "Ruby, you're still at Thompson's, right?" Mom would ask occasionally, not really interested in the answer. "Yep, same job," I'd say, and watch their attention drift away before I even finished speaking. It was easier that way. No need to explain that I'd quit 2 years ago, that I was making more money in a day than I used to make in a month. Sarah was the star of every dinner conversation. She'd gotten into Carleton University, one of those schools where the tuition costs more than a house. "It's so expensive," Mom would sigh, but her voice was proud. "But Sarah deserves the best education. We've taken out loans, of course, but it's worth it for our little girl's future." Sarah would beam, twirling her pasta. "My roommate has a Gucci backpack. Everyone there comes from such good families." The undertone was clear, "Unlike your family, Ruby. Unlike you." One Saturday, I arrived to find Mom in tears over bills. Dad was at the kitchen table, surrounded by paperwork, his reading glasses perched on his nose. "The property taxes went up again," he muttered. "And with Sarah's tuition." I watched them struggle, remembered all the times they'd chosen Sarah over me, and still, they were my parents. That night, I set up an automatic transfer, $1,000 a month, to their account. When I told them about it, Mom actually hugged me. It was the first time in years she'd shown me any real affection. "Oh, Ruby, this will help so much." I thought maybe things would change after that. Maybe they'd see me differently. But then I overheard them in the kitchen after dinner. "We should send some of Ruby's money to Sarah," Mom was saying. "At least $300. The poor thing feels so out of place among all those wealthy students." "Good idea," Dad agreed. "She needs to keep up appearances. Maybe she can finally buy herself that designer bag she's been wanting." I wanted to walk in there and tell them everything. About quitting my job, about my investments, about the fact that I could buy the whole damn designer store if I wanted to. But I didn't. I just stood there, shaking my head, listening to them plan how to spend my money on Sarah's social climbing. By the time I turned 29, I was ready for a change. My investment portfolio had grown beyond my wildest dreams, and I was tired of paying rent. After months of searching, I found the perfect apartment in a secure building with a great view of the city. Nothing flashy, just clean lines, good bones, and enough space to feel like home. Best part? I could buy it outright, no mortgage needed. The day I got the keys, I stood in the empty living room, listening to my footsteps echo off the hardwood floors. This was mine, all mine. No loans, no debt, no strings attached. I'd done this myself, without anyone's help or approval. When Mom called to check in, meaning, talk about Sarah, I mentioned I was moving. "Did you find a cheaper rental?" she asked, distracted. I could hear her shuffling papers on the other end. Just a different place, I said vaguely. Better location. Well, don't spend too much on rent, honey. You know how unstable the job market is for people in your position. I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing. If she only knew that my position involved managing millions in investments, not pushing papers at Thompson's. At the next family gathering, Aunt Jessica asked about my new place. Ruby's renting a new apartment, Mom jumped in before I could answer. But wait till you hear about Sarah's latest accomplishments. She's about to graduate from Carleton University. Top of her class. I watched the familiar scene unfold, relatives cooing over Sarah's prospects while shooting me pitying glances. Sarah's going places, Dad announced proudly. Not that we're surprised. She's always been our achiever. Already has companies fighting over her. Unlike some people who settle for mediocrity, my cousin whispered to his wife, not quite quietly enough. I sipped my wine and thought about the stock trade I'd made that morning that had earned more than his annual salary. But I stayed quiet. Let them think what they wanted. Then came Sarah's graduation party. Mom and Dad went all out, catered food, expensive decorations, the works. I noticed they used the money I sent them to help pay for it, but whatever. I was used to it by now. Sarah pranced around in her cap and gown like she'd just won the Nobel Prize. She spotted me by the punch bowl and made a beeline over, clutching her diploma like a weapon. Look at this, Ruby, she thrust the diploma in my face. Carleton University. Not some state school like you went to. And I already have interviews lined up with top companies. I'm not going to end up pushing papers like you. I took another sip of punch. Congratulations, Sarah. That's all you have to say? Aren't you jealous? I mean, I'm going to be so successful, and you're just, well, you. She stood there, practically vibrating with the need for me to acknowledge her superiority. I could have told her about my portfolio. About my fully paid apartment. About how I made more money before my morning coffee than she'd make in her first year of work. But what would be the point? Instead, I just shrugged and walked away, leaving her standing there with her diploma held high like a shield against her own insecurities. 3 months after graduation, Sarah was still unemployed. Those companies that were supposedly fighting over her? Turns out they weren't so impressed with her expensive degree after all. Meanwhile, the loan payments started rolling in. Ruby, Mom called one evening. Do you have a minute to talk? The loan payments for Sarah's education. Mom paused, probably for dramatic effect. They're really crushing us, honey. And with all our other bills. I hate to ask, but could you possibly? How much do you need? I asked, already knowing I'd regret this. Well, if you could increase your monthly help to $2,000, that would be such a blessing. I thought about all the times they dismissed my achievements, all the times Sarah had mocked my career. But I also thought about my bank account, with its comfortable 7 figures that my family knew nothing about. Okay, I said finally. I'll set up the new amount starting next month. Mom's thank you was barely out before she started planning how to spend it. This will help so much with Sarah's loan payments, and maybe we can help her buy some proper interview clothes. A few weeks later, Sarah finally landed a job at the same company where Dad had gone to college with the HR director. The irony wasn't lost on me when she ended up with the title of manager. I stopped by their house one weekend and found Sarah sprawled on the couch, scrolling through apartment listings on her phone. God, everything's so expensive, she whined. I can't believe I have to live here with Mom and Dad. This is so embarrassing. You could look at some smaller apartments, I suggested. Or maybe outside the city center? She looked at me like I'd suggested she live in a dumpster. I need to be in the right neighborhood, Ruby. Not that you'd understand. Some of us have standards. I glanced around at our parents' modest living room, where she was currently living rent-free, but kept my mouth shut. Anyway, she continued, tossing her phone aside, this is just temporary. Unlike you, I'm not going to be stuck as a manager forever. I have actual potential. As Thanksgiving approached, Mom went into her usual hosting frenzy. Every year, she insisted on doing everything herself, turning the kitchen into her personal stress domain. But this year was different. "I don't know what I'm going to do," she moaned over the phone a week before the holiday. "I sprained my back getting Sarah's laundry out of the dryer, and I can barely stand up straight. How am I supposed to cook for 20 people? Why don't you let me handle it?" I offered. "I can have everything catered from that new restaurant downtown." "You're such a good daughter," Mom gushed. "I don't know what we'd do without you." I caught sight of Sarah in the background of our video call, rolling her eyes dramatically. Mom's praise of me, however slight, was clearly ruining her day. Thanksgiving Day started like any other family gathering. The catered food arrived perfectly on time, and I helped Mom arrange everything while trying to ignore Sarah's running commentary about how store-bought stuffing could never compare to homemade. I'd brought my laptop along because the markets in Asia would be opening during dinner, and I had a few positions I needed to monitor. I set it up in my old room and left it running while I joined the family. The food was excellent, definitely better than Mom's usual dried-out turkey. As everyone settled in with their plates, Mom couldn't help but mention her back again. "I was so worried about how I'd manage the cooking," she said, addressing the whole table of aunts, uncles, and cousins. "But Ruby stepped in and arranged for all this lovely catered food. Wasn't that thoughtful?" "That's really nice of you, Ruby," Aunt Jessica smiled at me. "It must have been expensive." "Oh, it's nothing," I said, trying to deflect the attention. "I'm just glad everyone's enjoying it. She's doing well enough at that management job to help us out quite a bit," Mom added proudly, probably the first time she'd bragged about me in years. I noticed Sarah's face darken. She pushed her chair back abruptly and left the room. I thought she was just having one of her usual tantrums, but something felt different this time. She returned moments later, clutching my laptop with a triumphant smirk that made my blood run cold. "Let's see just how well Ruby's really doing," she announced to the whole table. "Since she's so generous, I bet she won't mind if I show everyone her bank account. Time to prove what a loser she really is." I jumped up from my chair. "Sarah, don't." But it was too late. She had already turned the laptop around, my banking app still open from my earlier check. The room went dead silent. Sarah's face drained of color. She looked like she'd seen a ghost. Her hand started shaking so badly, I thought she might drop my laptop. "Sarah?" Mom asked, concerned. "What's wrong? What does it say?" Sarah's voice came out as barely a whisper. $4 million. The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear the tick of Mom's ancient kitchen clock, the hum of the refrigerator, the sound of my cousin's fork clattering onto his plate. "There must be some mistake," Aunt Jessica said, peering at the screen. "Ruby's a manager at Thompson's." "I haven't worked at Thompson's for years," I said quietly, finally letting the truth out. "I quit to focus on investing full-time. I studied the markets, took courses, learned everything I could. And I got good at it, really good." "You mean you're rich?" Sarah's voice cracked on the last word. I took a deep breath and looked around the table at my family's shocked faces. "I've been investing for years now. Started small, learned as I went. Yes, I have $4 million in that account. And no, I wasn't hiding it, you all just never asked." The silence lasted exactly 3 seconds before Mom's scream shattered it like glass. $4 million? She shot up from her chair, her face turning an alarming shade of red. "You have $4 million and you've been letting us struggle all this time?" I stared at her in disbelief. "Struggle? I send you $2,000 every month. You're a millionaire." She was practically hysterical now, her voice reaching pitches I didn't know were possible. "Your sister has student loans. We have bills. How could you be so selfish, so greedy?" Dad joined in, his face twisted with anger. "We raised you better than this, Ruby. To think you've been hoarding money while your own family suffers." I felt something snap inside me. Years of being the second choice, the afterthought, the reliable but unimportant daughter, it all came rushing out. Hoarding money? Are you serious? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Where were Mom and Dad's savings for your college, Sarah? Oh wait, they didn't save anything, because they spent it all on your endless demands. But funny thing, they didn't pay for my college either. Remember that? I got a full scholarship while you went to your fancy private university on loans. That's different, Mom snapped. Sarah needed. Sarah wanted, Sarah. I was standing now too. It's always been about Sarah. Well, guess what? My money is mine. I earned it, every penny. $2,000 is nothing to you, Mom shouted back. You should be sending us at least $10,000 a month. We're your parents. The laugh that burst out of me was almost manic. 10,000? You want $10,000 a month? For what? So you can keep spoiling your precious Sarah? I turned to my sister, who was shrinking back now. You wanted to prove I was a loser? Surprise! The sister you've looked down on for years, the one you mocked for being just a manager, turns out she's the successful one. How does it feel? The relatives sat frozen around the table, forks suspended midway to their mouths, watching the scene unfold like a tennis match from hell. Well, if you're so successful, Mom spat, you can certainly afford to help your family more. It's your duty. My duty? I walked over to Sarah and snatched my laptop from her hands. My duty ended the day you decided Sarah was the only daughter worth caring about. She's the promising one, remember? The one with potential? Well, let her fulfill that potential and help you pay the bills. Aunt Jessica tried to intervene. Maybe we should all just calm down. But there was no calming this storm. Mom and Dad were both shouting now, their words overlapping into a hurricane of accusations and demands. Sarah had started crying, her go-to move when things didn't go her way. Without another word, I walked out of my childhood home, the sound of my mother's continued screaming following me all the way to my car. The messages started before I even got home that night. My phone buzzed constantly with texts and calls from Mom, Dad, and Sarah. At first, they were angry demands, then came the guilt trips. I tried responding at first, hoping maybe they'd somehow understand, but it was like talking to a wall. They didn't want to understand, they just wanted access to my bank account. Then Mom took it to social media. Her post was a masterpiece of maternal martyrdom. Heartbroken to discover my eldest daughter has become a millionaire while watching her family struggle. She refuses to help her sister with college loans or support her aging parents. Money truly changes people. Please pray for Ruby to remember her family values. The comments poured in. Family friends I hadn't seen in years suddenly had strong opinions about my character. How could she be so heartless? I always knew there was something off about that one. What kind of person abandons their family like this? Mom liked every single comment, adding little crying emojis and "thank you for understanding" responses. My relatives, who had witnessed the Thanksgiving meltdown firsthand, notably stayed quiet. But their silence didn't help much against the mob of family friends, calling me everything from ungrateful to evil. That was the last straw. I opened my banking app and stared at the recurring transfer to my parents, $2,000 monthly, which they dismissed as pocket change. With one click, I canceled it. I sent Mom one final message. I've canceled the monthly transfers. I'm done being your ATM, don't contact me again. They didn't take the hint. The calls increased, now coming at all hours. Sarah tried using different numbers when I blocked hers. Dad left long, rambling voicemails about family duty. Mom's social media campaign kicked into high gear. I blocked them all, phone numbers, email addresses, social media accounts. But I knew they wouldn't stop there. James, I called down to my building's concierge. I need to add some names to the do not admit list. I gave him their names and descriptions, even showed him pictures. He nodded understanding, making careful notes. Sure enough, the very next day, James called up to let me know my parents and Sarah had tried to force their way in. They'd caused quite a scene in the lobby, threatening to call the police. That night, I opened my laptop and started researching real estate in other states. Maybe it was time for a fresh start somewhere new. Somewhere they couldn't find me. Some might call it running away. I call it setting boundaries. They had their chance, years of chances, actually. They chose to ignore my achievements, belittle my success, and favor Sarah at every turn. Now that they've shown exactly how they view me, I feel no obligation to maintain the relationship. And as I research homes in distant cities, I feel nothing but relief. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do for yourself is walk away. Even, especially, from family.
What's with her? Is she Matt's ex-girlfriend? She seems pretty dull, huh? Yeah, she's from a poor family. She still lives in a house like a relic from the old era. Are you still living in that rundown place? Matt's attitude annoyed me, but strangely, it exuded a small-timer vibe that made me pity him. No, I'm living in that high-rise apartment you see over there now. Saying that, I pointed to a high-rise apartment not too far from here. What? How can that poor family afford to live in a high-rise apartment? I am Kate Simpson. My parents used to run a decent-sized factory, but when I was in junior high, we lost our market to cheap imports and nearly went bankrupt. Until then, we had lived a normal life, but suddenly we became poor. Well, it's just the way of the world, can't help it. Let's just be glad we bought the house while we could still afford it. True, jobs are hopeless, but if Dad works hard, it might just work out. And we can get rice and vegetables sent from the countryside, so it's not too pessimistic. But what about my high school education? Can we afford the tuition? I hadn't thought about that. You should talk to a school teacher. Right, you could join the military. They pay you to study, so maybe that's an option? Sigh. I'll talk to a teacher at school. My parents were optimists who always said, life works out somehow, or it's all fate. Eventually, after discussing it at school, I heard about a scholarship system at a private university's affiliated school. I studied hard and managed to become a scholarship student at that high school. And from there, I went on to university. Being a prestigious private school, most of my peers were rich kids. And I spent my high school days working part-time. And didn't have much time to hang out with friends, but in university, my father's business stabilized a bit, so I could do more typical girly things. One day, a friend invited me to a group date. I wasn't very keen, but I thought I'd try it once and decided to go. The event was held at a pub, with 3 men and 3 women. The male students seemed like they came from wealthy families, bragging about their fathers' companies and positions. I was introduced to a friend as the president's daughter, which caught the attention of a guy who seemed to be the leader of the group. He introduced himself as Matt Johnson. You're the president's daughter? So, you must be quite rich? No, my father just runs a small factory, so it's not what you'd think. My dad wears greasy overalls, not fancy suits. But you're still a president's daughter, right? Well, not wrong, but... Yes, I wasn't lying. Actually, I'm also a president's son. Johnson Construction. Ever heard of it? Sorry, I haven't. Really? It's quite a big company. Indeed, he exuded a rich kid vibe, wearing nice clothes and an expensive watch. Well, if we become friends, I think good things will come your way. Should we exchange contact info? I thought, if it gets annoying, I can just block him, so I exchanged numbers nonchalantly. A few days after the group date, Matt invited me to dinner. He seemed like a decent guy, and when I heard the name of the restaurant, it was a popular one, so I couldn't resist the invitation. After several such outings, he confessed, and we started dating. One day, he invited me for a drive. He said he would pick me up at my house, but explaining the location was a hassle. So we decided to meet at a nearby store. When he showed up, even I, who knows little about cars, recognized it was a Porsche. The number was 911, but somehow it felt off. I realized why. I see, it's a rented car. Apparently, he had rented a Porsche for our date. Well, for his honor, I'll keep quiet. What a slipper-like car, I said, and he replied, huh? Don't you know this car? It's a Porsche 911 Carrera. He got a bit angry, and our drive began in an awkward atmosphere. We took the highway and headed for Rocky Mountain. The weather was clear and cloudless, making it a perfect day for a drive. However, Matt was struggling while driving. And when I tried to talk to him, he snapped, "Shut up. You're distracting me." He was serious, driving with sweat on his forehead. His appearance was so intense that I asked, "Are you okay? Should we take a break?" But he snapped again. Driving a Porsche requires mental and physical strength and technique. I'm battling with the Porsche right now. As we approached Lake from the highway, the majestic Rocky Mountain came into view. However, Matt seemed very tired. We were supposed to drive another highway next, but it seemed impossible given his condition. "If you're tired, why don't we have lunch and then head back?" I suggested. Wiping his sweat, Matt replied, "Sorry. Driving a Porsche takes all the techniques I have, and I'm more exhausted than I expected. Driving a left-hand drive foreign car might indeed be more tiring than a domestic one." And I did feel a bit of sympathy for him. Of course, the car was automatic, and I could probably drive it myself, but I didn't mention that. We decided to head back before the roads got busier after an early lunch. We returned the way we came. As we re-entered the highway, we found ourselves in the labyrinth-like streets of downtown. The car navigation system seemed reliable, so I wasn't worried until I pointed out, "Hey, the navigation is telling us to turn right?" "Shut up. In this situation, it's impossible to move to the right." The road wasn't very congested, but the traffic flow was fast, making it difficult to change lanes. "But if we keep going this way, it might get crowded. Shouldn't we get off the highway?" "Yeah, I was thinking the same thing." What a convenient reply from him. However, the local roads were also jammed. It required even more attention than the highway, and he was panting heavily. We decided to take a break at a family restaurant we finally found. It was past the lunch rush, so the parking lot was relatively empty. But even there, I was made to get out and guide the parking. We had coffee and cake. He usually dislikes sweets, but he must have been very tired to eat cake. Eventually, he regained some energy and said, "I'll drive you home. I want to see the house of a president's daughter." "Really? My house isn't anything to brag about. It's just a normal house, and it's old, built when I was a child." As I tried to be modest, he insisted, "But it's a president's house, right? I've always wanted to see it. I'm not asking to come in, I'll just drop you off in front of your home." Somewhat forcefully, he convinced me to let him drive me home. The Porsche's exhaust sound echoed through the alleys of the downtown area, making me a bit nervous about disturbing the neighbors. "There, that house. Please stop there." "Huh? That's the house. He was somehow lost for words. His face seemed to cloud over. Thanks for today. Let's go for a drive again sometime. Ah. Thanks for your hard work. So, farewell. He didn't meet my eyes and drove off with a whoosh. Afterward, he started avoiding me for some reason. He wouldn't answer calls or reply to messages. Through a mutual friend, I heard he wanted to break up. Feeling unresolved and frustrated, I asked a friend to arrange a chance for me to talk to him. When we met, he said, I heard you were the daughter of a president, but seeing your old house, I was disappointed. You're really just poor, aren't you? That's harsh. My dad is a president and rich. Maybe you were trying to snag me for my money? That's not it. I wasn't thinking that. Sounds like something a poor person would think. I'm not that foolish. I'm ending our relationship. It's only natural, right? After saying his piece, he left. It was Matt who had wanted a relationship. And his attitude about my home and family was the most hurtful. After breaking up, I used that frustration as motivation to study even harder. Eventually, I secured a job with one of the leading architectural firms in the country, and was the first among my peers to work abroad. After several years, I returned home to find that my old house was included in a city development plan and was being bought out, forcing us to move. My father said, I'm getting old, and it might be a good opportunity to retire. Well, life works out somehow, doesn't it? And my mother added, maybe it's fate. We've had a tough time so far, so maybe it's time to relax. We ended up receiving more money than expected, and if my father was retiring, there would be no reason to live in the city anymore. It was a perfect opportunity to start the countryside life he had always dreamed of. I decided to leave it all to my parents and find my own place to live. I was informed that the demolition of my family home would soon begin. So I went to the house where I had lived for many years to witness its final moments. Before the demolition, I tidied up the house and looked around the suddenly spacious rooms. The marks on the pillars, the stains on the walls, and even the mold in the bath somehow felt dear to me. As a child, I was envious of friends who lived in apartments, and even told my parents that I wanted to move out of such an old house. As I was lost in these thoughts, someone approached me and said, "Excuse me, we're about to start the demolition. Is that okay?" So, I stepped outside. Thinking back, the house held so many memories. It's strange to feel a bit sad about it now. My parents, who were looking for a new place to live, considered living in the apartment that would be built on the same site, but my father said, "I can't live in an apartment, feeling like I'm not touching the ground." Mom thinks the same, right? Yes, it does bother me a bit. Having people right below your feet and above your head. My mother replied, clearly not too keen on the idea. Wondering what they planned to do. It seemed that they found a suitable property near my father's childhood home, and were considering moving there. They wanted to live a leisurely life while helping out with the family farm. I was all for it. My parents immediately started making arrangements. During that year's Easter holiday, I visited my parents' countryside home. The relatives I hadn't seen in a long time warmly welcomed me. "Kate, you've grown so much. Last time you were here, you were just a little girl in elementary school. And now you've become such a beautiful young lady." "I'm surprised," said my father's brother's wife with a smile. "Ah, back then she was so skinny, Ned was worried you weren't eating properly," teased my father's brother, who loves his liquor. Ned is my father's name. That's terrible. Kate always says her aunt's cooking is delicious, and she eats so much when she comes here. That's probably why she has that impression. Well, we have homemade vegetables here. It's fresher and much tastier than what you eat in the city. My aunt laughed. Above all, my cooking skills are excellent. Sorry, Susan, but that's something I can boast about. Susan is my mother's name. To be honest, my mother isn't very good at cooking. It's frustrating, but I admit it. My mother sighed, looking dejected. My parents and my uncle and his wife get along well. Since they didn't have children, I received a lot of affection from them. The reunion warmed my heart, as I usually live alone. Then the conversation turned to me. So, Kate, you're working at a construction company, right? Can you operate excavators and bulldozers then? Asked my uncle. Oh, uncle. I'm in the design department, so I don't use construction machinery, I replied. Design department, huh? So you're drawing and erasing lines on blueprints? Well, I do design, but it's more about creating spaces and designing layouts, so it's a bit different. Wow, that sounds like a tough job. Hard to believe Ned's child could do such a thing. He joked. Don't joke like that. I'm excellent, that's why Kate turned out to be such a capable person. Then, my uncle, slightly tipsy, blurted out something unexpected. By the way, Kate, isn't it about time you got married? Any nice guys around? I remember she had a boyfriend in college. Kate never properly introduced him to us, so I don't remember much. Chimed in my father, also tipsy. Stop that. That's a dark part of my history. Dark history? What's that? Oh, it's something from the past I'd rather not have others hear about. I want to erase the memory of dating that guy from my life. Wow, to think someone would break up with such a beautiful girl like Kate. He must be a real fool. Well, in that case, I'm erasing that memory. Uncle, pass me the drink. Ah, that's the spirit. The next day, there were 3 victims of hangovers. My boss, Tony Hansen, was honestly a person I found difficult to deal with. He's quite an elite, with sharp thinking skills. I heard he graduated from a national university with excellent grades. In meetings, when opinions clashed, he would methodically corner his opponent with his logical arguments, eventually getting them to agree with him. So, if you challenged him with half-baked knowledge, you'd be completely crushed. Today, we had a disagreement over a new design project. So tell me, what made you decide that Europe is superior, and America is behind? He challenged. Well, when it comes to design, Europe is indeed more advanced. These designs are inspired by that. Inspired, or just copying? Where is your sense as a designer? I am incorporating it properly into the design. I hate phrases like in Europe or overseas. In the end, you're just adapting what's been brought from elsewhere. After all, you are an American. Why can't you find design inspiration within America? What are your eyes seeing? I was frustrated but couldn't refute. Well, it's fine. You probably just lack experience. Take some time off. Go and see the old town. Yes. So, I took some paid leave and headed to the old town to explore America. I decided to stay at a slightly upscale traditional American hotel. Normally, I would stay at a motel, but since I was on a mission to experience America, I opted for a hotel that exuded the essence of the old era. The nostalgic smell and the enjoyment of cuisine filled my senses. During a chat after dinner, the owner mentioned that her son was currently working in the city. Seeing her happy face as she talked about her son, I couldn't help but ask, "Do you have any pictures of him?" Ready for this, she promptly brought out a photo. Looking at it, something seemed familiar. "Could it be that your son's company is?" "Yes, I believe it's Ford Construction, if I remember correctly." "What?" "That's my company." I recalled that this inn was named Hanson, so. "Could it be, what's your son's name?" "Yes, his name is Tony Hanson." I heard he became a section chief, but I've forgotten where. Ah. Tony Hanson? What happened? Actually, I work at Ford Construction too, and Mr. Hanson is my boss. He's always been a great help to me. Oh, what a coincidence. After that, we spent a lot of time talking about Mr. Hanson's childhood. Listening to the owner and looking at photos of him as a child somehow made me feel a closer bond with my boss. It was a fulfilling trip to the old town. I returned home satisfied, having truly seen America. After the trip, I began to talk more actively with Chief Hanson. Gradually, our conversations became less prickly and more supportive. Before we knew it, yesterday's adversary became today's friend, and sometimes after work, we would go out to eat or have a drink and talk about design. We eventually developed mutual feelings for each other. After a project wrap-up, we had drinks together and he formally asked me out. On my birthday this year, he proposed. Somehow, I ended up getting engaged to Mr. Hanson. When I told my parents, my father said, "Life really does work out, doesn't it?" And my mother commented, "It must be fate." Today, we went shopping together after a long time. This area has really developed, hasn't it? Yes, old buildings are being demolished, and new buildings and apartments are popping up. As we were talking and walking past a demolition site, a car stopped in front of us, and a couple, a man and a woman, got out. Hey, this is a demolition site. If you wander around, you might get hurt. Now, move along." I was irritated by the rude way he spoke, but my husband, now Tony, responded calmly. "We are walking properly on the sidewalk. Drivers are supposed to ensure the safety of pedestrians. Isn't it a bit rude to start yelling like that?" "Huh? Who do you think you are? It's dangerous because you're dawdling on the sidewalk." No, if you can't abide by traffic laws, you shouldn't be driving. What are you getting all high and mighty about? Who do you think you are?" Wait. I recognize this guy. Could it be Matt? Huh? Why do you know my name? Wait, you're Kate. Kate, you know him? Yes, well, he's an ex-boyfriend from my student days. What, Kate found a new boyfriend? Well, good for you. Matt, now energized, turned to Tony. "Ah, I'm Matt Johnson. I'm currently working here as the president of Johnson Construction. This is my current girlfriend. She's cuter than Kate." The girl introduced as his girlfriend looked back and forth between me and Tony, then snorted and turned away. Such a rude girl. What's with her? Is she Matt's ex-girlfriend? She seems pretty dull, huh? Yeah, she's from a poor family. She still lives in a house like a relic from the old era. Are you still living in that rundown place? I was irritated by Matt's attitude, but somehow his pettiness made him seem pitiful. I took a breath and pointed diagonally upwards. No, I now live in that high-rise apartment you see over there. What? How can that poor family afford to live in a high-rise apartment? Our house was included in the urban development area, and we received compensation for relocation. Plus, that high-rise apartment is sold by our affiliated company. So I got it at an employee discount. Then, Tony chimed in. If Kate knows you, I should introduce myself as well. I'm Tony Hansen, Kate's husband. I also work for Ford Construction. Thanks to some help from my parents. Even a young guy like me could afford that place. What? Your parents gave you money? But Ford Construction. Matt tilted his head, then seemed to realize something. Wait. Ford Construction. Yes, Ford Construction is handling this development. I believe we've contracted Johnson Construction for the demolition work here. Wait, Matt, aren't you the president of a major construction company? His girlfriend looked confused and asked him. Shut up. I used to be, but ever since I became president, business hasn't gone well. And now we specialize in demolition work. I've heard that the second-generation president of Johnson Construction is known for his sloppy work and arrogant attitude. You're that second-generation president, it makes sense now seeing you. Tony nodded in understanding. Shut up. I have my way of doing things. It was just the old-timers at the company who opposed me, so I fired them. I see, it's as bad as the rumors said, maybe worse. I'll need to discuss this with my father. Your father? Is he some big shot? Tony's father is the grandson of the founder of Ford Construction. He's currently the president of the company. I informed Matt. Tony is a candidate for the next president of Ford Construction. What? Ha, well, you and I are similar, born with a silver spoon. I'm so sorry. I had no idea you were the scion of Ford Construction. I apologize for my disrespectful behavior. No worries, we're off the clock now. We'll discuss work another day. A sweating Matt was at a loss for words. His girlfriend, exasperated, said, What a mess you are, sweating like that. I'm going home. This is boring. Wait a minute. Well, she's gone. Maybe I overdid it, huh? Tony said, clearly not too bothered. Kate. Say something. Make sure he doesn't cut off Ford's business. I can't really do much. You and I have nothing to do with each other anymore. Well, make sure the demolition work is done properly. We'll see each other again later. Matt drooped his head in defeat. It felt a bit sad, but honestly, it was a relief to get rid of a long-standing grudge. Later on, the contract with Johnson Construction was reviewed. Of course, Ford Construction wouldn't end a contract over one incident like this. Upon further investigation of Johnson Construction, it turned out that they employed many illegal workers. Because of this issue, Ford Construction decided to terminate their contract with Johnson Construction. Once this incident became public, Johnson Construction's revenue plummeted, and the company soon went under. President Matt is now working as a laborer at some demolition site. And I, at 33, gave birth to a child and quit my job. Now I'm dedicated to raising my child and managing household duties. My husband, Tony, as the next president, is busy learning from the current president. He often says he wishes he could just play with our child all day. From our apartment, the sunset is beautiful. As a child, the sun used to set behind the nearby factory. But here, it sets behind distant mountains. With a loving husband and a sweet child, I feel truly happy. I hope this happiness lasts forever. What are you doing here? This is a high-end residential area. We live in that luxury apartment building over there. This area isn't for people like you. I couldn't believe I ran into him again, the man who left me for a younger, wealthier woman. And now, here they were, both looking down on me again. You're still as plain and poor as ever, huh? Oh, by the way, I make over $100,000 a year now. Over $100,000? That must be tough. The unexpected comment came from my husband. My name is Emily Johnson. I'm 28 years old and work at a company that deals with ceramics. My love for ceramics began during a family trip in middle school, when we stopped by a pottery market that my mother adored. Now, I'm lucky to have turned that passion into my career. I used to think it was fine to stay single forever, but life has a funny way of surprising you. I got involved in a town revitalization project through a pottery market where I met Tom, who worked at an event planning company. We started dating. Emily works hard and respects my job. I feel like I can build a stable life with her. That's what he used to say, and I also thought we could make it work. Even after getting married, since I had no intention of quitting my job. Tom's job required him to travel a lot for events, and he was often busy on weekends. My job was similar, with the occasional need to work on weekends due to the kiln schedule. It was tough not being able to meet up on our days off. And sometimes plans got canceled at the last minute, but I thought it was all part of the deal. I was too naive. Tom started canceling plans more frequently, even skipping our wedding planning meetings. Unlike before, he stopped answering his phone. One day, after finishing a meeting, I was heading towards the station when I spotted Tom on the opposite sidewalk. Wow, what a coincidence! I thought we could have dinner together since I could head home early today. As soon as the light turned green, I rushed across the street to catch up with him. Tom. Finished with work? Want to grab dinner? Huh? Standing next to Tom was a tall, stunning woman. And they both turned to look at me at the same time. Her arm was tightly wrapped around his. Emily. What are you doing here? What a coincidence. I had a meeting nearby, just finished. Are you still working? Who's this? It didn't seem like a work situation at all, but I tried to stay calm. I knew Tom often worked with promotional models at events. Oh, this is Catherine, she's a model. Hello. She smiled brightly at me. Wow, she's gorgeous and has a great figure. Of course, she's a model. So, it must be work-related. I felt a bit relieved. Although, I wasn't thrilled about them linking arms, she hadn't let go at all. But maybe it's just normal for someone in her line of work? Hello. I'm Emily Johnson, Tom's fiancée. As I introduced myself, Tom suddenly looked as if he had bitten into something sour. And Catherine glanced between us before bursting into laughter. Wait, this is your fiancé? Oh my gosh, I can't believe we ran into each other, Tommy. Tommy? Come on, I told you to sort this out already. Might as well do it now. Nodding at her words, he turned to me. Emily, listen, I'm with Catherine now. What? I'm sorry, but I want to call off the engagement. I'm going to marry Catherine. What? Wait, what are you saying, Tom? I met Catherine at an outdoor festival event, and we just instantly felt like it was fate. Sorry. But it was Tommy who insisted he'd break up with his girlfriend for me. She said it so casually. So, thanks for everything up until now. Wait, Tom. At least let's have a proper talk. But there's really nothing left to talk about. What? My mind's already made up. Catherine is cute, has a great figure, and is honestly amazing. She's only 24 and comes from a wealthy family. Oh, Tommy, it's just because my dad is the CEO. Anyway, I'm going to marry Catherine and become part of her family. What? Are you quitting your job too? I thought you liked your job. Catherine asked me to. Plus, it'll be more profitable than my current job. Oh, and make sure to cancel the wedding venue. Don't worry, I'll cover the cancellation fees since it's my decision. Oh, Tommy, you're so responsible. I just can't wait to be with Catherine. You're so cool. I struggled to keep from collapsing. It was clear that no matter what I said, it wouldn't change anything. Tom was completely smitten, just like Catherine said. All right. I managed to force out the words. I can't cry, not here, not in front of these people. Well, see ya. Good luck with your ceramics work. What's that supposed to mean? The two of them walked off, arms linked, laughing together. 2 years have passed since I broke up with Tom. Now, at 30, I'm still fully dedicated to my work. Looking back, I don't miss him at all. In fact, I consider myself lucky that I didn't have to deal with his infidelity after marriage. Seeing my newly designed ceramics fresh out of the kiln gave me a boost of energy. And there was someone who had been watching over me, Robert Black. A craftsman I've worked with for years. I always thought his mind was entirely focused on pottery. So, when he asked me out and confessed his feelings on the third date, I was taken aback. I had always admired him as a craftsman, so I was genuinely happy. But with the trauma I had been through, I couldn't easily dive into another relationship. I decided to be completely honest with him. When I was engaged, I had announced it to everyone at the company and among the kiln workers. So he knew about the breakup too. He listened quietly, then gave me his usual gentle smile. That must have been really hard for you. Yes. When I heard you were getting married, I was really shocked. But I figured it was only natural for someone as wonderful as you to have a partner. And I blamed myself for not making a move sooner. What? I hadn't expected to hear that. When you told me that the engagement was off and forced a smile, I wanted to be there for you immediately, but I knew you needed time. So I focused on my work, hoping that creating beautiful pottery would help lift your spirits. You've been thinking of me for that long. And believe it or not, I'm actually quite popular. Huh? Maybe it's because my grandfather is wealthy. But I've had my fair share of attention from some very beautiful women. Yet, I never felt a spark. I'd much rather spend my time working with clay. I see. He wasn't bragging or joking, he said it all in a straightforward, serious tone. As I was thinking about how sincere he was, he looked directly at me. Emily, you're the first person I've ever wanted to make happy. I felt a mix of wanting to laugh and a warm feeling spreading through my heart. With him, I felt like everything would be okay. Before I knew it, I was saying, thank you. I'd be happy to be with you. A year later, Robert and I got married. Everyone at the company and the kiln celebrated our union. To continue working, we decided to live in 2 locations after getting married. One was his family's home near the kiln. I had heard his grandfather was wealthy. But I was shocked when I saw the grand estate they owned. We live in one corner of that estate. We often talk about how, in the future, I might leave my job to work with him at the kiln and live there permanently. The other place is a rented apartment in the city, close to my office. The apartment is still sparsely furnished. So today we decided to visit a nearby furniture store together. There, we had an unexpected encounter, not a pleasant one. While browsing the sofa section, a voice called out from behind us. "Hey, isn't that you, Emily, the plain girl?" Tom. More than 3 years had passed, but there was no forgetting my ex-fiancé, Tom. And standing next to him was his model wife, Catherine. I knew they had married after our breakup. She had been flaunting it on social media and in magazines. But Catherine looked different somehow, less attractive, with a harsher expression. I realized I hadn't seen her in the media lately either. Tom, too, was smirking, but his face lacked its former vigor. "This is a high-end residential area. What are you doing here? Oh, do you need a permit to shop in this upscale area? No way, you don't live around here, do you? This store is expensive, you know, not a place for someone like you. Yeah, you still look as plain and poor as ever. Just like the color of that clay you love so much." I hadn't expected any apologies for the past, but their condescending attitude was exhausting. "Yeah, having someone as dull as you hanging around here will drag down the store's reputation. People might mistake us for poor folks. Did you come all the way here? By the way, we live in that famous luxury tower over there. On the 25th floor, no less." Their bragging, even though I hadn't asked, irritated me. But responding would have been a waste of time. I kept silent. My lack of response seemed to annoy Tom, who continued to pester me. "You still going on about how much you love pottery? With those shabby clothes. Oh, by the way, I'm making over $100,000 a year." He moved into my luxury apartment as my live-in husband. Just for me. Over $100,000? That must be tough. What? The sudden comment came from Robert, catching even me by surprise. We both spoke up at the same time, shocked by these obnoxious people. "I can't help but worry about your financial situation, even though it's none of my business." "Who's this guy?" Tom asked, finally noticing my husband. "Nice to meet you, I'm Robert Black. It seems my wife Emily was in your care in the past." For a moment, both Tom and Catherine looked surprised. But then they sneered, looking Robert up and down. "So, you actually got married, huh? Well, you two are perfect for each other, plain and boring." "Yeah, he looks like he's in a daze. I didn't even notice he was here. And what was that about tough, just now?" Tom glared at Robert. "Oh, well, you said you live on the 25th floor of that tower and make over $100,000 a year, right?" "That's right, over $100,000. Tom puffed out his chest. "And with all those brand name items you're wearing. I couldn't help but worry about your financial situation, even though it's none of my business. You're just bitter and talking nonsense because you're poor. Sorry to disappoint you, but we're doing just fine." "Is that so? By the way, is your wife feeling all right?" "She doesn't look well." "What?" "Hey, Catherine, are you okay?" "It's nothing. You probably can't comprehend a figure like over $100,000 a year. What about you? Earning $10 an hour?" "No, it's not hourly. I'm not employed by a company, I stay at home." Are you serious?" "Anit? I knew it. She probably just married you to become a cash cow." "Wait, that's not." "Stop mocking my dear Emily. Trying to defend her, huh? Gotta do your part as a freeloading husband, I guess." And he calls his own wife my dear Emily. What a weirdo. The two of them continued to look down on us, completely misunderstanding the situation. Emily, let's go. Dealing with these people who have no future will only cause trouble. Yes, let's leave quickly. Robert took my hand and we walked away. Talk about sour grapes. Don't come back here again. Yeah, stop pretending you belong in this neighborhood. But we do live in the President Tower, you know. When Robert answered, they burst out laughing. Lying to cover up your embarrassment. That's such an obvious lie. Everyone knows that name. It's the most famous and expensive building in the area. There's no way any ET could afford to live there. Ignoring their loud laughter, we walked away. I can't believe we ran into them here. I'm so sorry, Robert. I apologized as we walked. No, I should apologize for being so forward, worrying about their financial situation. I guess this is why people say I'm bad at reading the room. Ha! I nearly burst out laughing at my husband's usual seriousness. That's not the issue, clearly, the rude ones were them. But they do live nearby, huh? I really hope we don't run into them again. Our apartment is also in this neighborhood. Their tower was one of our options. But I'm so glad we didn't choose it. Robert responded. Don't worry, they won't be around for long. Huh? I heard that the woman's family is wealthy. Do you know her last name? Huh? I had no idea what Robert meant, so I just stared at him blankly. A few days later, as Robert and I were leaving the building, we suddenly heard voices. There they are. They really do live here. Tom and Catherine appeared in front of us, and I was taken aback. What are you doing here? Please, help us. What? They're kicking us out of the tower. Oh. And why is that? Rent arrears. You were behind on rent? Well, that's understandable then. This really had nothing to do with us. Wait. They had been giving us more time. But suddenly they said they couldn't wait any longer, and it's all because of your husband. Catherine suddenly shouted. Why would that be my husband's fault? When they mentioned the name Black. Your husband turned out to be the owner of that tower. She looked furious, her face red with anger. It's not me, it's my father. What? It originally belonged to my grandfather, but it's in my father's name now. Either way, it doesn't matter. The management company said that if we don't pay up immediately, they'll start the eviction process. That's only natural. It's not a charity. What? That's why I said it must be tough making over $100,000 a year. What do you mean? Tom shouted. Making over $100,000 for a couple should allow for a comfortable lifestyle. But if you're living on the 25th floor of that tower, with a rent of $5,000 a month, surely you haven't forgotten about taxes, have you? What? And on top of that, you're indulging in luxury brands. It's no wonder you're drowning in debt. What? Catherine, you're the one who insisted on living there. When did the rent fall behind? I had to maintain relationships with people on the upper floors. High-end lunches, spa treatments, expensive bags, and jewelry are necessary to be taken seriously. You don't have to keep up with those people. Huh? Is it really that important to put on a show, even if it means going into debt? Debt. Tom shouted, genuinely shocked. Did he really not know? How could you be behind on rent and also in debt? What were you thinking? I had to be at the top of the social ladder. I can't afford to look shabby, especially as a model. You're hardly getting any modeling work anymore. I thought so. That explains why I haven't seen her around lately. That industry must be tough. New, younger faces keep popping up one after another. I murmured, and Catherine glared at me with a look of fury. Shut up, you plain girl. Damn it, what the hell, Catherine? You said you'd take care of the finances. And now you tell me you haven't even been paying the rent. But didn't you say her family is wealthy? You boasted about it, right? Why not just ask them for help? I offered a suggestion, albeit sarcastically, but with a hint of kindness. But Emily, her family's business has been struggling since last year. They don't have the extra money. What? That's probably why they couldn't pay the rent. They might have been relying on her family for support until now. Wait. How do you know about my dad's company? My grandfather is the chairman of the Black Corporation. What? The Black Corporation. A true, born wealthy individual. Tom muttered in a daze. My family used to do business with your father's company. But we don't have any dealings with them now. Robert continued calmly. My grandfather owns many properties, both in the US and abroad. Then why didn't you say that the last time we met? It's not something I would bring up on my own. It would be improper. What? Are you trying to insult me? That wasn't my intention, but perhaps it ended up that way. This is so infuriating. I'm really sorry. Don't apologize with that tone. This was like a comedy sketch. As their argument gained rhythm, I was about to laugh when Catherine snapped at us. But it's not your money, is it? You're just leeching off your grandfather's wealth, just like I thought. I decided to set the record straight. Robert is a renowned potter. What? These days, customers are willing to wait months for his pieces. At the same time, he works with the kiln to produce more affordable items so that more people can enjoy his work. They sell out online every time. Wah! My husband has never relied on his grandfather's money. Don't compare him to yourself. My grandfather always says he's there to help if we ever need it, though. Robert chuckled and then turned serious as he looked at Tom and Catherine. As stated in the contract, if rent is overdue by 3 months, the lease is terminated. And eviction proceedings begin. If there's still no payment, forced eviction occurs within 2 to 3 months. The contract for that tower specifies this clearly. They waited 5 months because they believed your wife's story. What? She claimed that her husband's illness had reduced their income and begged for more time. What the hell, Catherine? What were you doing? But that was a complete lie. You were actually racking up debt while living lavishly. I reported this to my father and grandfather. Why the hell do you know about our debts? Tom was pale, and Catherine was nearly in tears. I investigated. Robert said calmly. I knew about your past from Emily. But we're happy now, so running into you by chance was just that, chance. Then that should be fine. But what did you say to Emily when you met? No apologies, just insults and disdain. That's unforgivable. No way. And I was genuinely concerned. You said you were living in that tower on an income of $100,000 a year. What? At least now you've realized the situation before your debts got any worse. Robert smiled as he spoke, leaving Tom and Catherine speechless, their mouths agape. What the hell is with this innocent rich boy? I was impressed by the apt description. Robert wasn't being sarcastic, he was just stating the facts. Maybe it's because he's born into wealth, or perhaps it's just his personality. I think it's the latter. Hey, Emily, please help us. We're sorry. Yeah, if you ask, he might do something. Wow, talk about a sudden change in attitude. I refuse. I smiled sweetly, imitating Robert's tone. Though my smile was far from innocent, it was quite the opposite. Your debts are none of my concern. Exactly. Emily, let's go. Wait. Don't just smile and cut us off like that. Ignoring their desperate cries, I walked away hand in hand with Robert. After that, Tom and Catherine were, of course, evicted from the tower. Catherine's father paid the overdue rent, but in exchange, he disowned her. With their family business in crisis, Catherine's parents were furious with her for squandering money to keep up appearances. And they made it clear she wasn't welcome until she paid back both the debts and the rent. Tom, fed up with her behavior, is reportedly in the midst of divorce proceedings. But considering he indulged her and left all the financial management to her, I'd say he's at least half to blame. Catherine, on the other hand, had borrowed money from shady sources without her family or Tom knowing. And now she's being chased by debt collectors. As for Robert and me, our new dinnerware line is doing well. And today we're at the kiln discussing our next designs. We want to gradually expand the range to include items for families, couples, and even individuals enjoying some personal relaxation time. Emily, what do you think about the color here? Can you take a look? Sure. And someday, when we have children, I want us all to sit down and eat together with the dishes Robert has crafted. Surrounded by the scent of clay, we continue working in the studio we love. During the bubble economy, I saw many people swayed by money. Even now, as a shareholder with an annual dividend of $100,000, I may not fully understand how to use money. My son's wife, who looked down on me as a poor pensioner and even spoke of cutting ties, was in for a surprise when she learned the truth. My name is Debbie. I'm 68 and living on a pension. I lost my husband in an accident when I was 33, and since then, I've raised my son on my own. He's now independent, with a family and 2 kids, making me a grandmother of 2. My lifestyle appears to be that of a pensioner, but in reality, I'm a shareholder with an annual dividend of $100,000. This is a fact almost unknown to anyone. More than 30 years ago, during the height of the bubble economy, I lived modestly with my husband and our son, who had just started elementary school, in an apartment in Brooklyn, New York. Though close to downtown, it still retained the atmosphere of an old downtown area, cluttered and bustling with old buildings being torn down to make way for new ones. My husband's company was doing well, with generous salaries and bonuses. Most people were caught up in the bubble, believing in a bright future ahead. Young women who had just graduated from high school flaunted brand bags, took taxis as their mode of transport, and those with a little money invested in stocks, while those with more bought and sold land and buildings. It was that kind of era. Both my husband and I were prudent types. We saved for our son's future and avoided frivolous spending, though we did indulge in the occasional luxurious family trip. The only extravagant thing was that my husband, persuaded by an insurance salesman, signed up for a high-priced life insurance policy. He was only 36 and healthy, and I opposed the idea of a $1 million life insurance policy as unnecessary. But the salesman argued, "What if something happens and you have a small child?" So, we signed up. Nothing changed because we had insurance. We continued to live happily as a normal family. But less than a year later, an unexpected tragedy struck. My husband died in a traffic accident. The other party was a rich man's son, and we were offered a substantial sum in compensation and settlement. With the insurance payout, I suddenly became a wealthy widow. The influx of money brought me no joy. I was merely heartbroken over losing my husband. If I could have exchanged all my wealth to bring him back, I wouldn't have hesitated. I truly loved my kind-hearted and cheerful husband. As I was drowning in sorrow, the comments from relatives at the funeral shocked me. "It's unfortunate, but you've come into quite a bit of money, haven't you? It was good timing to have that insurance. There's a really good property available, could you lend some money?" There were even those trying to sell me something. Everyone seemed a bit crazy from the bubble. From then on, I distanced myself from my relatives. Yet, as time passed and my grief somewhat eased, I was thankful that the money ensured that my son and I could live comfortably. By simply depositing the money in the bank, we earned enough interest to not worry about living expenses. I had never been interested in branded goods or gourmet foods, and I couldn't bring myself to waste the money I had exchanged for my husband's life, so I worked part-time at a nearby grocery store. Even just working a few hours while my son was in school allowed us a comfortable life. Many would envy us. As the bubble economy was about to end, I was 36, and my son had just entered junior high. Suddenly, the economy cooled, and companies began to go bankrupt one after another. What was all the festive noise until now, I wondered. Money truly makes people crazy. Those relatives would not have acted like that if it weren't for the bubble. Back then, bank interest was 5%. It was thanks to that interest that I could cover my living expenses. Interest rates would only go down from there. It was around this time that I met James, a 34-year-old working at a securities company, 2 years my junior. He too had been swayed by the bubble. He deeply regretted having several clients who went bankrupt because of his advice. Some even had families that fell apart. "At least no one has taken their life," he said among colleagues who had similar experiences. I asked him, "I want to invest in companies that managed their business prudently during the bubble and have always been diligent." James, perhaps feeling a need for atonement, gladly accepted my request, and I became a shareholder in several companies. This turned out to be a success. Though there were no dramatic price increases, these companies grew steadily and solidly, making me a shareholder with an annual dividend of $100,000. I kept this, along with the fact that our house had money and the investments were doing well, hidden from my son. I always thought that money made people crazy, and knowing about the money wouldn't be good for my son's future. "I have a little money left from your father." That's what I told my son. When he turned 30, he said he wanted to marry and brought his partner to meet me. She was a beautiful young lady, a coworker, 3 years his junior, named Vanessa. At that time, my son and I were still living in the old Brooklyn apartment in New York, where we had lived with my husband. The apartment was scheduled to be demolished during the bubble period, but the bubble collapsed just in time, and it remained. I thought that when my son got married, he could set up a new home, and whether he lived with me or not, we would think about it at that time. Above all, I was attached to the apartment where I had lived with my late husband. To Vanessa, it must have seemed like nothing more than a poor single-mother household. She looked around the room without any reservation and said, "It's impossible for the 3 of us to live here, isn't it?" I thought so too, so I just nodded silently. Mom, we want to live by ourselves until we have children. We're thinking of renting an apartment nearby. It seems my son is already under his fiancé's thumb. Essentially, Vanessa does not want to live with me. I guess that can't be helped. About the living expenses. Until now, out of my son's monthly salary of $2,500, he had been contributing $1,500 to the household. In fact, I had been depositing it all directly into a bank account under his name. That's okay. There's still a little money left that your father left us, and I'll go out and work part-time. My son seemed relieved when I said this. Until then, I hadn't had such a bad impression of Vanessa, but while my son was in the bathroom, she said in a condescending tone, "Mother is from the bubble era, right?" Born in an era when you could make money, yet living like this. If it were me, I definitely could have become rich. People can say anything in hindsight. Everyone was somewhat caught up in the wave of the times and danced along. It may seem foolish in retrospect, but there are things that can't be helped when you're in the midst of it. In about 5 years, the pension will start to be paid out, right? Please try your best without relying on us until then. It was said mockingly. I was tempted to retort. Actually, I have an annual stock dividend of $100,000. And I have over $3 million in savings. But I held back and said, please take good care of my son. My son has his own life. I should be there to help if he really needs it. That's what I decided, and I never revealed my secret to my son and his wife. Still, I secretly handed over the bank book with the money my son had been contributing to the household. Don't let your wife find out. Use it if you ever run into trouble. The savings were over $100,000. My son seemed quite surprised. That's the money you've been contributing to the household since you started working 8 years ago. Didn't I say there was a little money left from your father? So, we're okay for living expenses. But I thought it wouldn't benefit you to say that. Money is important, but it can drive people crazy. Use it wisely. My son nodded deeply. 8 years have passed since he got married. I was still working part-time a few hours a day, a valuable connection to society. When I wasn't working, I installed a large monitor in my room to watch my favorite movies, or I would go to art galleries and museums, leading a fairly fulfilling life. I now have 2 grandchildren, a 6-year-old grandson and a 4-year-old granddaughter. Grandchildren are indeed precious. My son sometimes brings the 2 kids to visit the apartment, but Vanessa never accompanies them. However, one day, Vanessa came along unusually. Seeing her grandchildren, who are fond of me, she raised her eyes and said, I knew it. You've been bringing the kids here all the time, haven't you? No, not that often, because you said you didn't want Mom to come over to the house. Don't moms want to see their grandchildren too? It seems my son had been bringing the grandchildren without telling Vanessa. I'm sorry. I said I wanted to see the grandchildren. When I said this and showed a gesture of defending my son, Vanessa exclaimed hysterically. I don't want a poor pensioner telling me what to do. You don't have money to contribute, so just keep quiet. I definitely don't want to take care of you, and if it were up to me, I'd be fine with cutting ties. With that said, I couldn't just stay silent. Vanessa. I hope you don't regret saying that. There's no way I'd regret it. That's that then. I won't let you see the children anymore. Saying this, she took the children's hands and started to leave. My son seemed shocked as well. Hey. What are you saying? Wait a minute. Sorry, Mom. I'll have to leave it at that for today. He said and followed his wife and children. I sighed. It's been 8 years since my son got married. A daughter-in-law I've barely seen. A daughter-in-law who treated me like a nuisance from the start. It's normal for mothers-in-law and daughters-in-law to not get along. She had said that before, but there's nothing I can do if she never intended to get along in the first place. About 2 months later, my son came to my apartment after work, looking pale and obviously troubled. Sorry, Mom. Vanessa found the bank book you gave me. It was indeed surprising that I had managed to keep it a secret for so long. It's been 8 years since they married. I'm amazed I managed to keep it hidden from that daughter-in-law for so long. From what I hear, my son's life has been quite miserable. Initially, his monthly allowance was $300, but it dropped to $200 after the first child was born, and then to $150 after the second child. It's tough, especially including lunch expenses. Meanwhile, while enforcing frugality on her husband, Vanessa seems to freely spend money on cosmetics, clothes, and nice lunches. So, I've been withdrawing a little each month from that savings. Like when I go out for drinks with colleagues or when my socks get holes, and I can't get new ones, I buy them myself. Hearing this made me feel so sorry for my son. Apparently, he had kept the transaction slips in his wallet, which Vanessa found. What is this statement? There's nearly $100,000 in the balance. She pressed him, and he confessed that it was money left by his father that I had given him. It's slightly different, but that's okay. It's all been taken away. About $20,000 seems to have already been withdrawn. I'm just so tired. According to my son, having that savings was what allowed him to endure various things. The daily complaints, bad-mouthing others, and calming down his wife's hysterical outbursts. I advised him to report his cash card as lost for now, so no more money could be withdrawn from the account. If you report it as lost and get it reissued, Vanessa won't be able to withdraw money. Contact the bank as soon as possible. That's right. I guess I was too shocked to think of anything. My son, to put it kindly, is laid back, to put it less kindly, a bit too slow. Didn't she say something terrible to you the other day? When I defend you a bit, she immediately starts yelling, "This mama's boy," and throws a fit. The situation seemed even more serious. Lately, it seems she's been saying horrible things to the kids when I'm not around. I thought this could not be overlooked. Think carefully. What's best for you and the children? If it's just you and the 2 grandchildren, I can take care of you. That was all I could say. I couldn't force them to divorce, and I believed marital issues should be resolved between the spouses. If you ever find yourself with nowhere to go, you're always welcome here. When I said this, my son nodded several times. A month later, I was on the sea. A luxurious cruise around Caribbean for 10 days with my son and the 2 grandchildren. 10 days of relaxing away from worldly troubles. The cruise ship was luxurious, with no time to be bored due to its many facilities. During this time, I received a call from Vanessa, my daughter-in-law. I could have ignored it, but I answered the phone. "Mother. Where are you? I went to the beauty salon, and when I came back, your son had left a divorce notice and took the kids somewhere. He hasn't come back since yesterday. I went to your apartment, and it's been demolished. My son is here with me." I switched to video call, showing the blue sea below and the luxurious interior of the ship. Huh, what? We're on a luxurious cruise ship with the grandchildren. We're about to have a welcome French dinner, so I'll be excusing myself. What? Wait a minute. What are you talking about? Ignoring Vanessa's shouting, I hung up the phone. Throughout dinner, she called several times. After enjoying a leisurely French meal, I answered the phone. You finally answered. What's going on? That apartment is being rebuilt into a condominium. We decided to take a little trip while construction is underway. My son had accumulated paid leave, so he's here with me. Huh? I don't understand what you're saying. It doesn't concern you since you wanted to sever ties, but actually, I'm a shareholder with an annual dividend of $100,000. Sorry to disappoint you, but I'm not just a poor pensioner. What? What is that? Wait a minute, Mother. You've severed ties with me, and my son is talking about divorcing you. Anyway, we'll talk when we get back from our trip. We'll be staying in a hotel while the condominium is being built, so I'll contact you again. While Vanessa was still screaming on the other end, I hung up without paying any more attention. This past month has been eventful. Upon realizing she couldn't withdraw money, Vanessa had a fit and claimed a share of the property. Marital property refers to what is accumulated during the marriage. This doesn't apply, and she wouldn't accept my son's explanation. He pointed out how she spends $500 a month on clothes and cosmetics, to which she snapped back. What's wrong with a wife wanting to look beautiful? My son came to me with a completely exhausted face. I'm thinking about getting a divorce. He said it softly. Yeah. That might be a good idea. As for where we'll live, I'm thinking of rebuilding this apartment into a condo. Or maybe we should just buy a high-rise apartment? Initially, my son thought I was joking. What are you talking about, Mom? Actually, after the bubble burst, I had bought the land and building here, which had significantly decreased in value. The building was already old, but I continued to live there because it was filled with memories of my late husband. Thus, I finally decided to reveal the secret to my son. I still don't know if it was the right thing to do. Back then, I just didn't know what was best. I couldn't waste the money I got in exchange for your father's life. As for Vanessa, maybe things would have turned out differently if I had told her from the start that we had money. No, I think it was good. I couldn't indulge in great luxuries, but I never felt miserable. I had a normal student life. If I had known we had money, knowing me, I might have strayed off the path. I thought that wasn't true, but maybe that's just a parent's bias. Even with Vanessa, maybe it was good that we kept it hidden. To be kind because there's money, to sever ties because there isn't. Who would want a wife like that? My son said this with a touch of sadness. After revealing everything to him, it felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. My son said he'd rather live here if we were to rebuild, as he's not fond of high places. That was actually my preference as well, so I promptly contacted a construction company. The land isn't very large, so only a small condo could be built, but I was happy to continue living on this familiar land. Designated by me, Vanessa, with a solemn face, visited a luxury hotel room. My son, the grandchildren, and I had returned from our luxury cruise and decided to live in a downtown luxury hotel until the condo was ready. I had lived modestly without relying on money until now. The luxury cruise and the luxury hotel were my first real indulgences. I thought it was okay to treat ourselves this much. I spent my days visiting zoos and aquariums with my grandchildren, and sometimes I relaxed and hired a sitter. My son said it felt strange as he commuted to his office from the hotel. You were really wealthy, weren't you, Mother? Vanessa was like a different person now, quiet and gauging my reactions. You don't need to call me Mother anymore since you've severed ties. With an unervingly sweet voice, she said. Oh, don't say that. I know I wasn't a good daughter-in-law, but I'll change my heart from now on. I don't think you have a heart to change. I no longer intend to continue as husband and wife. My son said this decisively. What? The children need their mother, don't they? She tried to call the children to her side, but the 6-year-old said, I don't like Mommy because she's scary. I like Grandma better. Vanessa was taken aback. What? Why is everyone against me? I will never agree to a divorce. I expected her to say that. If that's your intention, we will hire a lawyer and fight. We will also demand that you return all the money you withdrew from my son's savings. Vanessa was at a loss for words. No matter how much it costs, I will secure the divorce and custody. But if you sign the divorce papers now, I won't demand the money you spent. I felt like I was being the villain, but Vanessa, seeing no chance of winning, slumped her shoulders and said, I understand. The 3-story condo was modest. The first floor had my residence and my son and grandchildren's home. Even knowing there was money, my son's lifestyle hadn't changed much. He bought aircraft model kits he loved since childhood and spent his weekends assembling them, his greatest joy. He couldn't take the models he had built long ago when he got married, so he displayed them in his room, always smiling. Isn't there anything else you want to do? I had asked him once. If that's what you're saying, Mom. You could indulge a little instead of donating all the time. He said that with a laugh. Money is important. It's definitely better to have it than not. But, the things you love or enjoy aren't always solved by money. That might be true. When the grandchildren want to pursue something or decide on a path forward, they won't have to give up because of lack of money. When my brother and his wife's parents needed care, I could provide enough money. That might be enough. After the divorce, Vanessa met the children on visitation days, but gradually, these visits decreased and were often cancelled. It seems she's busy with matchmaking. She's inherently self-centered and cold. She probably thinks the fish she let go was the biggest one. Maybe she thinks there might be a richer man out there, searching desperately for the next man. Each time she meets a man, she might think, could he be wealthy, and act demurely? It's a funny thought, but I never heard she remarried. Debbie, you've been through a lot, haven't you? Saying this over lunch was James from the securities company, who seems to have risen high but has stayed single. The cruise was a lot of fun. Next, I'm thinking about going on a world cruise. How about joining me, James? His face lit up with surprise. Wow, that sounds fun. Are you sure I can join you? Of course. Traveling alone is lonely. Really? Just the two of us, not with your family? My son can't take such a long holiday. The kids have school, too. James and I have known each other for 30 years. I knew he had feelings for me, but I loved my late husband, and James, perhaps out of penance for the hardships he caused during the bubble, seemed to deny himself happiness, never actively pursuing me. Thank you for watching over me all these years. Would you like to grow old together with me? It might have been an unexpected proposal for James. Having money means I could live alone, but it's much better to have a partner to grow old with. Wait. Please let me propose formally later. James said, checking my ring size. I'm going to buy a ring now, so please excuse me. He hurried off. After receiving surprising news from my mother that my runaway sister had returned, I went home with my son Ryan only to find, as expected, women's shoes in the house. Moreover, she appeared in just her underwear. She laughed out loud and tauntingly said to me, "I'll take the luxury high-rise condo and the rich husband. The poor should just keep working part-time forever." But then this voice came from behind. Too bad. Sleeping pills don't work on me anymore. It was Matt, my husband, who casually emerged and said this. He burst out laughing. So, she's trying to create a fait accompli with me? What would she gain from that? The house is all Sandra's. Yes, the high-rise condo we live in belongs to me. Acquired through inheritance from my previous husband. My name is Sandra White. I am a 34-year-old who works at an organization dedicated to preserving America's classical culture. Matt, my husband, is 3 years younger and a former junior of mine. Currently researching American classics in graduate school. He is still enrolled in a doctoral program. Diligently working towards completing his dissertation to earn his PhD. Since he has a flexible schedule, he takes over tasks I can't fit into my day. Like picking up Ryan from school or taking him to extracurricular activities. But that's not all. Honestly, Matt is far better at household chores than I am. He can't make elaborate dishes, but he is efficient in the kitchen. Besides his own study space, he keeps everything tidy with minimal effort. And he handles laundry and related tasks more delicately and carefully than I do. I can take care of our life. Can I ask you to handle the housework? Those were the words I proposed to him with. Honestly, I fell for those qualities of his. I'm just too busy, and I can't manage everything. I told him to keep on with his research without worrying about our livelihood. His parents were shocked too. Are you treating our son like a gigolo? They had said. But now it feels like a distant memory. However, after discussing our feelings, living arrangements, and our child, we ended up marrying. And he became a stay-at-home husband. It was an unusual pairing, but we were happily getting along. Then, one unexpected day, something happened. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was about to leave work and drive to pick up Ryan. A rarity since Matt, usually preoccupied with his thesis, would do it, when suddenly my phone rang. Hello? Mom, what's up? It was my mother. My hometown is far from where we currently live in the city center. About a 5 to 6 hour drive. Since getting married, whether we visit during Easter, Christmas, or any other holiday is always in question. So, we usually keep in touch via messaging apps, but direct phone calls are rare. My parents always consider my busy schedule and call at designated times. Sandra, something serious has happened. What's the matter, calling all of a sudden? Vanessa has come back. Vanessa? Vanessa is my sister, 2 years younger than me, but I haven't seen her in over 10 years. She left home at 18 and had been missing since. The company she was with went bankrupt. Bankrupt. Yes, she was banging on the intercom, and then she and her husband disappeared overnight because of a massive debt. She couldn't deal with debt collectors coming after her. So she got someone to write their name on it and filed for divorce. I inadvertently let out a gasp. And now? I told her she couldn't come in, but she shamelessly showed up. And even left her daughter with us. What? She left her there? Yes, and she's so small. I asked her age because she seemed really little. So, what surprised you? Well, when she came, I thought she was still in kindergarten. But she's a year younger than Ryan. What? Ryan is 9, so she should be in 2nd grade, but she looked like a kindergartner. Mom, is the girl that small? She's tiny and very skinny. Her skin is dry, and she's got chapped hands. I gave her some snacks and am bathing her now, but she seems very uncomfortable. My mother's voice seemed to be holding back tears, as if she would break down at any moment. But I had to ask one more thing. You're not going to kick her out, are you, Mom? What are you talking about? Of course not. No matter how bad Vanessa is. This child is our granddaughter. Oh, her clothes are tattered too. That's good. So, Mom, where did Vanessa go after leaving the child? This was crucial to know. She's at your place, Sandra. What? Why my place? It seems she had talked to some old acquaintances before coming to our place. And they told her you had married a wealthy man. I instinctively put my hand on my forehead. Someone who doesn't know better shouldn't have half-told stories. Did that person give her our address? No, but they gave her your work-related SNS account. Work-related, huh? That can't be helped. I do need to promote certain aspects of my work through SNS. So Dad is hurrying over to your place right now. Dad is? So, please hold on until then. Wait, Mom, when did Vanessa? Before I could finish, the call ended. It's just past 3 p.m. After picking up Ryan from school and taking him to his lessons. Waiting for them to finish and then going shopping. Matt has been so absorbed since yesterday that he won't be able to cook tonight or all of tomorrow. So, shopping is absolutely necessary. And even if he does finish writing, he'll likely fall asleep without eating. Usually, after staying up for 3 days, he sleeps for a day and a half. Buying a large amount of ready-to-cook ingredients means it'll likely be past 6 p.m. by the time I'm done. It's worrying, but what will happen? Wait, Mom, you have a sister? Yes, I do. I see. In the car, after finishing the shopping, I decided to briefly explain the situation to Ryan. Surprised? Not really. I guess it's just the kind of thing that happens around here. At 9 years old and in 3rd grade, Ryan is quite sharp and a bit precocious. Being part of a slightly unconventional family, he understood quickly once I explained the situation. I think he must take after his father. When I was his age, I was just fighting loudly with my sister. Compared to that, Ryan is quiet and thoughtful. It's a bit worrying, actually. Well, yes. There's always a lot going on. In what way? Where should I start? There are things I can tell a child and things I cannot. You know the house where Mom and Ryan used to live, right? Yeah. It's near Grandpa and Grandma's house. My sister didn't like living in that town and ran away over 10 years ago with someone she loved. Wow. That's amazing. Hey. Yes, at 18, Vanessa eloped with a venture company president who was nearly 40 at the time. It wasn't really about love. Vanessa was involved in compensated dating, starting from high school. Our family never deprived Vanessa or me of anything. They saved enough money for us to attend the schools we liked, and we had ample allowances. But it seems that wasn't enough for Vanessa. She went to a private university in the city center. But when the first semester of her freshman year ended, the Academic Affairs Office suddenly contacted me. It turned out Vanessa was pregnant. When our father angrily demanded to know who the father was, Vanessa simply confessed. It was the same person she had just divorced. Angered both by the compensated dating and the partner, our parents told Vanessa to leave. She left without fuss, and then she lost touch after moving in with him. If she had merely left, we might have been able to trace her through her health insurance card. But because she married him and was covered under his insurance, it became impossible to track her. Once the initial anger subsided, worry set in. It seemed almost rude that there was no contact at all. And my parents had many reasons to be angry. After all, my parents faced rumors at work and in the neighborhood. They felt embarrassed for raising a daughter who had done such things. I was a leading candidate for the department head position, but now it's going to be difficult. Etc. I've heard many such unpleasant stories. However, what caught my attention in my mother's recent story was about the child who is now 8 years old. This means the child is not the one Vanessa was pregnant with all those years ago. I'm very curious about what happened to that child. Mom, you look scared, said Ryan. Sorry, I replied. Is there something you're worried about? Yes, it's about Ryan's cousin. Eventually, we reached our high-rise condo, struggling with the heavy shopping bags. It was so heavy that I considered asking the concierge for a cart at the entrance. Ms. White, your sister Ms. Hanson was here earlier. The concierge informed us. Did you let her in? We checked and copied her ID. Oh. I covered my eyes with my palm. I'm sorry, it's my fault for not being thorough with the security instructions. So, I shouldn't have let her in? Well, that's true. But it's okay. This time it's my fault. Also, has my father arrived yet? Your father? Please hold on, the concierge said and went to check again. He hasn't arrived yet. I see. When my father does arrive, please let him in immediately. Understood. I showed the concierge a photo of my father, emphasizing that he should definitely be allowed in. Then, we loaded our bags onto the cart and took the elevator to the top floor. We're home. And as we opened the door, sure enough, there were women's shoes. Oh, you're back early, said the voice of my sister, more flamboyant than I remembered, but appropriately aged. However, that wasn't the problem. What are you wearing? Vanessa had appeared in just her underwear. Ryan, who had been pushing the cart, stood wide-eyed and lost for words. What do you mean? She laughed out loud and tauntingly said to me, looks like I won the jackpot. I'll take the luxury high-rise condo and the rich husband. The poor should just keep working part-time forever. Ryan and I were simply astonished. But then, from behind, came the next voice. Too bad for you. Sleeping pills don't work on me anymore. Emerging from behind Vanessa, Matt appeared, casually draping a shirt over his bare skin. His disheveled appearance as he scratched his head could, when viewed alongside Vanessa's, be misconstrued as postcoital. However, such a thought never crossed my mind. It was impossible for him. I was confident of that. Because this guy tried to use that, it totally broke my concentration. Seriously. Wait, what? You knew it didn't work, you realized it was a sleeping pill? I did think it was strange that I felt so drowsy, but that doesn't mean I could actually sleep. No, that's just weird. Ignoring Vanessa's comments, Matt turned to Ryan. Ryan, thanks for doing the shopping. Yeah, Dad, help me put it away. Ryan said, pushing the cart inside. Okay, Matt replied and went with Ryan to the kitchen, pushing the cart. As they moved, he muttered both irritably and deliberately. I knew Sandra had a sister and thought something might be up. But I never expected to be drugged right off the bat. But, my sleeping hours are a mess anyway. And I'm so full of thoughts right now that I can't sleep unless I actually try to. So, I can tell the difference between natural sleepiness and not. What? Vanessa's expression grew even more severe. Well, I figured you were up to something. So I just played along and pretended to sleep. What's this guy even doing? Matt spoke in a very matter-of-fact way, lining up his words one after the other. And facing him, who remained calm, Vanessa, who had seemed so confident earlier, was taken aback, not understanding what was happening. Whoa, what is with this guy? Well, it's not like she had much of a choice. What do you mean what? You're the one dressed like that. Did you strip that man's clothes off, trying to create a done deal or something? I sighed deeply. Oh, why has she always been so foolish? But considering how things unfolded, it's not hard to guess what happened. First, Vanessa found out I lived in a high-rise condo in the metropolitan area and made her way here. Then, posing as the sister of someone who lives in the top-floor penthouse of this high-rise, she gathered information in the neighborhood. She learned that Matt, while being a house husband, was involved in research potentially related to my current job. Thinking Matt would be home alone, she targeted a time when I was away. From Matt's perspective, probably after several presses of the doorbell, he finally answered to find a woman claiming to be my sister. And here he was, still half lost in his thesis and not fully back to reality. From Vanessa's perspective, a disheveled, almost pajama-clad man appeared. She probably thought, he's young. What? My sister snagged a younger, rich intellectual? That's so unfair. I'll steal him. Then, for some reason, she used the sleeping pills she happened to have with her, tried to put Matt to sleep, stripped him and pushed him into bed, aiming to present me with a fait accompli. But she didn't know Matt. Generally, when he's absorbed in his research or writing, he forgets about time and meals. Trying such a thing on someone like him was pointless. And I knew it better than anyone. Wait, she tried to create a fait accompli with me? At that, Matt's voice grew louder and he burst into laughter. What would that even achieve? The house is all Sandra's, you know? Yeah, what's this old lady even talking about? Hey, that's rude. What do you mean by this kid? Well, he can rightly call you auntie, since he's my son after all. What? Your son? But he's so big. He's still in his 20s, right? Well, yes, he's from my previous marriage. Remarried? So, the wealthy marriage was. You wouldn't know since you've been away so long. With that, I was finally able to enter my own home. As I hung up my coat and placed my bag down, Matt brewed some coffee, saying, "You must be tired." My gaze wandered to the living room table where a half-open bag lay carelessly placed. The room, kept clean except for my personal space, felt oddly disordered just from that bag. It was displeasing. I wanted to tidy it up immediately. What, you won't even serve me a cup of coffee? Vanessa glared at me jealously as I sipped my delicious tea. I don't really feel like serving someone who would drug their tea. Besides, how long do you plan to stay in that outfit? I don't want a pervert roaming around my house. First explain to me. Why do you own this high-rise condo? Oh, why can't my sister ever engage in a proper conversation? Well, fine, I suppose I have to explain for her to understand. You see, when my previous husband died leaving his child behind, he left us a lot of wealth. That's how I bought this place. Not with a loan, but in cash. Huh? You're in cash? But, this place costs millions. Well, this is just 1/100th of the real estate I currently own. Vanessa was speechless. Yes, the top floor of this high-rise condo is completely mine. That's not all. I currently own numerous properties, with a total asset value of $200 million. Not only does the income from these properties allow for a wealthy lifestyle, but I am also a consultant for an organization involved in cultural projects, protecting American classical culture. Half of it is for tax purposes, and the other half is for Matt. So my busy daily work involves being a director for that organization. Occasionally, I receive reports related to land. Explaining all this to her. Sandra owns all this? Yes, me. Because, Vanessa, you wouldn't know since I got married right after graduating from university. And you probably don't even know why. What is it? Because of the serious trouble you caused, Dad's credibility at his company plummeted. And we had a lot of difficulties. Humph. A grown daughter can do whatever she wants. You weren't even of legal age back then, were you? You had been involved in compensated dating since high school, which only added to Mom's embarrassment, as it showed she couldn't educate her daughter properly. Then, coincidentally, a marriage proposal came from the Cooper family. The Cooper family? Yes, they were considered the lords of our region, that family. What? You married into that prestigious family? Matt sighed and then said, "Let's move over there for a bit, Ryan." Ryan, understanding it was an adult conversation, moved away. So, you married into that family? Yes. But not to the person you're thinking of. I married the older brother, who was the heir. What? The bedridden waste of space, the burden of the Cooper family? Yes, him. Indeed, my former husband had been described that way. Born frail, he hardly ever went to school and always had doctors around him. That's why he was considered a burden to his prestigious family. But that was only the perspective from outsiders. His parents and his younger brother, the next heir, didn't think of him that way. Everyone loved him, a man without desires. He happened to fall in love with me when I was visiting home and saw me at the hospital. Then, the lords of the Cooper family came to our house to ask for my hand in marriage because their son, who had never wanted anything before, had made his one and only request, even pleading to me, who was much younger. I got married at the age of 22, hoping it would somewhat widen my parents' shoulders. My former husband passed away when Ryan was still in my womb. Even the pregnancy was through artificial insemination. He didn't have the strength to conceive a child naturally. It was a wish of my in-laws, and I agreed for the sake of my gentle former husband. My former husband was able to watch my belly grow but passed away without seeing his child, leaving only his name. As a young widow, my in-laws thanked me and left me an inheritance as per his will. However, some relatives eyed the substantial inheritance I received like vultures. So I moved to a high-security high-rise condo in the city center when Ryan started kindergarten. As I further explained, Vanessa shook her head and hands saying, "No, no, 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 how can I believe such a fairy tale-like story?" She yelled at me with utter disbelief. What can I say? So what about him now? You received such an inheritance and you're allowed to remarry. I was allowed. Well, I didn't really need permission, but I consulted them anyway. They were really good in-laws, and I felt bad. But they said they were sorry I had to spend the best years of my youth caring for a sick man and going through an artificial pregnancy. That should be enough with the inheritance you got. Time and life cannot be bought with money, they said. My gentle in-laws, who had lost a beloved son to illness, understood these two values very well. Perhaps because they were wealthy. Later, when I moved to the city center, I was exhausted from single parenting. So different from the life with my in-laws. That's when I reconnected with Matt, a junior from my university days who had admired me. He became a great help to me when I was overwhelmed. As he started coming around more, Ryan grew attached to him, and I thought it would be nice to have him by my side, so I proposed. My in-laws described Matt as a harmless person who seems interested in nothing but his studies. They didn't object to the remarriage, in fact, they supported it. Possibly as a check against relatives who might try to push their preferred partners on me to induce a remarriage. As if you're the only one who gets to be happy, Vanessa began to say when my phone rang. A call at this time meant, "Ah." I switched to speaker mode after picking up. "Hello, Sandra. I hadn't heard back from you for a while, are you okay?" Vanessa groaned on the spot. "Oh, Mom, I'm fine." "That's good. By the way, I just heard a voice like someone stepped on a frog. Is Vanessa there by any chance?" "Yes, she is." I looked at Vanessa with a big smile. "Mom? Why do you know here? You really have a memory like a sieve, Vanessa. You were the one who said you were going to your sister's place. That's terrible. Why is there such a difference in how you treat your daughters?" Vanessa shouted angrily at the phone. "What? Are you in any position to say that? After you left, until Sandra married into the Cooper family, the situation around our home. It wasn't quite ostracism, but because Dad held a good position in the company. We were the subject of terrible rumors. That only ended after 2 years because of Sandra. The Cooper family pulled some strings, which helped our neighbors, relatives, and Dad's faction at work. You nearly destroyed everything Dad worked for at the most important company in our city. That's your problem. I didn't ask him to climb the corporate ladder. Still, It's thanks to him that we were able to enter a private university in the city center. Sure, but that doesn't give you the right to act all high and mighty. Maybe. But Vanessa, what happened to the child you were carrying back then? My mother's voice turned chillingly cold as she asked Vanessa. What? You ran away with him when you got pregnant, right? So what happened to that child? That, he took the child with him. I contacted that he you mentioned. Vanessa moaned. With the Cooper connection, when I searched for you, I got his mobile number. My mother continued relentlessly. He apologized for running away, thanked me for the divorce. Said he was mediocre at making money but a better person than you. He can't tell me where he is, but he's working somewhere far away. Trying to repay his debts. Alone. Alone? I asked my mother. Yes, alone. You can imagine what that means, right, Sandra? My mother mentioned that the child Vanessa brought was in terrible condition. I quickly turned towards Vanessa. You, the child. Stop it. Why are you looking at me like that? Mom said the little girl you left with her was very thin. That's because things have been tough lately. People who are going through tough times don't carry that kind of bag. I pointed to the bag thrown on the living room table. That's clearly a designer brand, isn't it? I bought it 2 or 3 years ago. Mom said she looks like a kindergartner. Even though she's only a year younger than Ryan. Isn't that right, Mom? That's right. Mother's voice grew even lower. Her name was Anna, right? Was she attending kindergarten or school properly? Her speech seems a bit delayed too. Of course, she was. Grandma, is Mom over there? A frail voice came from the other side. Yes, Anna. Do you want to talk to Mom? No. I definitely don't want to go back. I don't want to go back to Mom's place. Anna, Vanessa's daughter, began to cry on the other side. I don't want to become like my sister. I see. It seemed there were unspeakable truths hidden in her words. I've been talking to her intermittently just now. She seems to have had a sister, apparently. The past tense indicated something more. I don't know anything about that. With that, Vanessa quickly moved to grab her bag and clothes. That's not going to happen. Matt grabbed her hand, and Ryan secured the bag and clothes. Then, turning to another smartphone. Hello, Grandpa, now's the time. With that signal, the front door opened. This is the police. We received a report of unlawful entry and assault. And we're here to detain a woman accused of child abuse. Sandra. You did well to keep her here so long. Dad. Several police officers secured Vanessa on the spot. Are you all right, Ms. White? Yes, I'm fine. The concierge was also standing at the entrance. He was the one who opened the door. It's been a while, Vanessa. Dad. One of the police officers took the clothes and bag from Ryan. They didn't have the luxury to dress her in those clothes. So a blanket they had likely brought was wrapped around her. Matt pointed to the bag and said, I haven't checked inside, but I believe it contains sleeping pills. I'll accompany you for a blood test. I have a resistance to them. But they should still be detectable in my blood. Thank you for your cooperation, they replied. Then, through the phone, my mother asked me to switch to camera mode. Then, I saw my mother on the screen, holding a little girl in her arms. Officers, it seems that this girl's mother also did something terrible to her first child, leading to the loss of a small life. Our first grandchild. Anna was wearing clothes that Ryan had worn when he was much younger. It wasn't clear whether they would fit her as Ryan was quite large for his age when he entered kindergarten. Still, the clothes seemed slightly small but wearable. Her slender wrists were visible from the sleeves. "Ah, those are my clothes." "Hello, are you Anna?" Ryan gently spoke to his cousin through the screen. This kindness must be inherited from his biological father. "Yes." "Who are you?" "I'm Ryan." "I'm your cousin, a year older than you, so I'm your big brother." "Big brother." As she spoke, perhaps reminded of her lost sibling, Anna started to fuss again. "Come visit us sometime." "Yes," the little girl nodded on the screen. "Then, Sandra, we'll take her away now." "Sorry for the intrusion." "Ryan, play chess with Grandpa later." "Okay, I'll be waiting." Immediately after our exchange. "What is this? You all have your little family drama. And I have lost everything." Hearing this, I walked up to Vanessa and slapped her sharply across the face. "No. Violent woman. Officer, arrest her too for obstructing public duties." While restraining the struggling Vanessa, one of the officers smiled wryly at me and tried to calm things down. "I'm sorry, but I just had to tell my sister." "What is it?" "You lost everything because of your own actions, not anyone else's. Nothing is coming back to you, and I won't let it. I will make that child ours. Stay away from us forever. Let's go, everyone." Matt urged his father. "That's right. See you later then, Sandra." "I'll be waiting, Dad." "Take care, dear." After seeing everyone off, I slumped down where I was. "It's okay, Mom. I'm really tired. It's good that we did the shopping today." Indeed. What a day it had been. It's only been about 6 hours since Mom called. Later, Dad and Matt returned and said that Vanessa would be detained by the police for a while. No bail. Absolutely not. While we were having a late dinner, Dad said with a strained voice, "She's already divorced, and there's no one on her side to take her back. Let's just let her be tried swiftly." Indeed, after some time, Vanessa was convicted. She had inflicted pain on her own family, caused the death of one child, and was abandoned by the surviving child. Now, she must face a long life ahead alone. Sometime later, my parents brought Anna to our house. "Hey, you've gotten pretty cute." Anna blushed at Ryan's comment. "Where on earth did you learn to speak like that?" Stop it, Dad, that tickles." "Stop it." Ryan laughed as he played with Matt. Anna watched this scene of her adoptive father and brother in astonishment, then gazed blankly at us. "Is it really okay, Auntie?" She hesitated over her words, asking if she could live here. I had already decided to adopt her at that moment, thinking it was the best solution. I even considered initially having her grow up with my parents. However, there was concern that back home, she might be stigmatized as that girl's child. My parents felt. They also planned to move closer to me after they retired. Until then, we agreed to travel together during holidays. It seems Anna is a bit behind in her studies, so attending the same school as Ryan might be difficult. Nonetheless, the life we can provide her now will be much better than her previous one. Now that the source of our troubles is gone, we can focus on slowly working towards happiness. We have plenty of time.